The streets were quiet, most people retreating into their homes after a long day. It was a typical evening in the quiet neighborhood where 5-year-old Tommy lived with his parents. Tommy was a curious child, always eager to explore and discover new things around his home. His parents often found him poking around in the yard, collecting interesting rocks or following butterflies. That particular evening, Tommy was playing in the yard when he spotted something unusual near the gate. A large dog, a pit bull with a dark, glossy coat and eyes that seemed to shine with intelligence, was standing just outside the fence. The dog looked strong but worn, as though it had been wandering for days. Dirt clung to its fur and it wore no collar, giving the impression that it was a stray. Tommy was captivated. He had always loved animals and couldn't resist the urge to approach. The pit bull watched as Tommy approached, its ears perking up. Some people might have felt fear in such a situation, given the dog's size and breed, but Tommy saw only a potential friend. His small hands gripped the bars of the gate as he looked up at the dog with wide, curious eyes. "Hi, doggy," he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. To Tommy's delight, the pit bull's tail gave a tentative wag. Encouraged, Tommy opened the gate a little wider and gestured for the dog to come closer. It hesitated, glancing around as if unsure whether it was truly welcome. But Tommy's innocent smile seemed to reassure it, and slowly, cautiously, the pit bull stepped through the gate, sniffing the ground as it came closer. Inside the house, Tommy's mother, Sarah, was preparing dinner. She glanced out the window to check on Tommy and froze. Her son was standing beside a massive pit bull, his tiny hand resting on the dog's back as if they were old friends. Alarmed, Sarah rushed to the door, her heart pounding with worry. She knew that pit bulls had a reputation for being aggressive, and the sight of one so close to her young son filled her with fear. "Tommy!" she called, her voice laced with concern. "Come inside, honey." Tommy turned to look at his mother, his expression one of pure excitement. "Look, Mom, I made a new friend," he shouted, oblivious to her worry. He patted the dog's back, and the pit bull looked up at Sarah, its gaze calm and almost gentle. It made no aggressive moves, simply standing by Tommy's side as if it understood the bond the boy felt. Sarah hesitated, torn between her instinct to protect her son and the strange calm that seemed to emanate from the dog. There was something in the animal's eyes, a softness that contradicted its powerful appearance. She took a cautious step forward, her gaze fixed on the pit bull. "Tommy, come inside now," she repeated, her voice gentler but still firm. To her surprise, the pit bull took a step back, giving Tommy space to move away. It was almost as if the dog understood her words, respecting her request. Tommy reluctantly let go of his new friend and headed inside, though he kept glancing back at the dog with a wistful look. That night, as the family sat around the dinner table, Tommy couldn't stop talking about the dog. "Can we keep him, Mom? He doesn't have a collar, maybe he doesn't have a home," he pleaded, his eyes shining with hope. Sarah exchanged a look with her husband, Mark, who was equally concerned about the stray dog. "Tommy, that's a big responsibility," Mark explained gently. "We don't know where he came from, or if he has an owner." "But he's so friendly," Tommy insisted, his small fists clenched in determination. "He just needs someone to take care of him." Sarah sighed, feeling torn. She knew how much Tommy loved animals, and she had seen the gentleness in the dog's eyes. There was a part of her that wanted to believe in the dog's kindness, to trust the connection Tommy had felt. But her protective instincts made her wary. After a brief discussion, they decided to let Tommy visit the dog again, but only under close supervision. The next morning, Tommy bounded outside, looking for his new friend. To his delight, the pit bull was lying by the gate, as if it had waited there all night. Tommy opened the gate, and the dog immediately rose to its feet, wagging its tail as it approached him. Sarah watched from a distance, her heart racing, but the Pitbull's behavior was nothing but gentle. It seemed to respond to Tommy's every movement, mirroring his excitement with a quiet, loyal presence. Over the following days, the Pitbull became a regular visitor at their home. Tommy would spend hours playing with him in the yard, under Sarah and Mark's watchful eyes. The dog, whom Tommy named Buddy, seemed to understand the unspoken rules. He never entered the house and always stayed by Tommy's side, a silent guardian in the boy's life. Buddy's loyalty and patience won over Sarah's initial fears, and she began to see him as a gentle soul rather than a threat. As the bond between Tommy and Buddy grew, the townspeople started to notice the dog as well. Neighbors would often see the pair playing in the yard, the sight of a little boy laughing beside a massive pit bull both charming and surprising. Some expressed concern, warning Sarah and Mark about the dangers of allowing a pit bull near their child. But Sarah, having seen the dog's true nature, defended Buddy, insisting that he was as gentle as any pet could be. However, it wasn't long before an incident occurred that would put Buddy's loyalty and the bond between him and Tommy to the ultimate test. Days turned into weeks, and Buddy became a beloved fixture in Tommy's life. He would appear like clockwork every morning, waiting patiently by the gate as if he had found a purpose in watching over his young friend. Tommy's laughter filled the yard each day, echoing through the quiet neighborhood as he played with his loyal companion. Sarah and Mark, initially cautious, had begun to accept Buddy's presence, though they never let their guard down entirely. They watched every interaction, their eyes carefully observing for any sign that Buddy might pose a danger. The townspeople, however, were less convinced. Word had spread about the large pit bull that spent its days with the young boy, and the sight of Buddy's powerful frame beside little Tommy unnerved some of the neighbors. People would often pause as they walked by, giving Buddy wary looks, some even muttering warnings to Sarah and Mark. "Pit bulls are dangerous," they would say. "You can't trust them. One day he might turn on the boy." Sarah felt a mix of frustration and doubt. She had seen nothing but gentleness from Buddy, but the warnings made her wonder if she was being naive. Her heart ached each time she saw Tommy's unbridled joy with Buddy, knowing that allowing a stray pit bull to stay was a risk. But Buddy's quiet loyalty and his unwavering presence gave her a sense of reassurance she couldn't explain. One evening, as the family sat on the porch, Tommy resting his head on Buddy's back, Mark broached the topic. "Maybe we should try to find out where Buddy came from," he suggested gently. "He might have an owner looking for him." Tommy's face fell, his small hands gripping Buddy's fur. "No, Daddy, he doesn't have anyone. Buddy's mine. He needs me." Mark sighed, exchanging a look with Sarah. "We just want to be sure, Tommy. He could be someone's pet who got lost. And if he doesn't have a home, well, maybe we can make one for him here." Tommy's eyes lit up with hope. "You mean Buddy can stay forever?" Sarah smiled, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. "Maybe, sweetheart. But we have to make sure it's safe for everyone." The following day, they took Buddy to the local vet to check for a microchip or any sign of an owner. The vet's assistant, initially hesitant, was soon won over by Buddy's calm demeanor. He sat quietly as they scanned him, his eyes flicking to Tommy, who held his hand the entire time. When the scan revealed no microchip, Tommy beamed with joy, hugging Buddy tightly. "You're mine, Buddy," he whispered as if sealing a promise. Back at home, they began preparations to welcome Buddy as part of the family. Mark set up a doghouse in the yard, and Tommy eagerly filled it with blankets and toys. Buddy seemed to understand that this was his new home, resting in his doghouse but always keeping an eye on Tommy, his steadfast companion. But not everyone was happy with Buddy's new home. A few concerned neighbors voiced their fears more openly, warning Sarah and Mark about the risks of allowing a pit bull near a young child. They cited stories of aggression, of sudden attacks, urging the family to reconsider. Mark found himself torn, wanting to protect his son, but also respecting the bond he had seen develop between Tommy and Buddy. He decided to set stricter rules, keeping Buddy outside when he and Sarah were not around and always supervising Tommy's time with the dog. Then, one cold evening, an incident occurred that would test everything. It was dusk, and Tommy was playing outside with Buddy, throwing a stick and watching the dog bound after it. Sarah watched from the kitchen window, a fond smile on her face. She had come to trust Buddy, though she always stayed alert. As she turned to prepare dinner, a piercing scream shattered the quiet. Heart pounding, Sarah rushed outside. She found Tommy standing frozen near the fence, his face pale with terror. On the other side of the fence, a large man stood, his expression menacing. The man's eyes locked on Tommy, a sneer crossing his face as he moved closer, one hand reaching over the gate. "Hey, little boy," he drawled, his voice dripping with malice. "Why don't you come here?" Tommy took a step back, his hands gripping the fence, his eyes darting to Buddy, who stood between him and the stranger, his body tense, muscles coiled like a spring. A low, rumbling growl escaped Buddy's throat, a sound unlike anything Tommy had ever heard from his friend. The pit bull's normally gentle eyes were filled with a fierce protectiveness, his gaze fixed on the intruder. The man laughed, though his expression faltered slightly at the sight of the powerful dog. "That mutt won't protect you," he taunted, taking another step forward. But Buddy didn't back down. His growl grew louder, his stance unwavering as he positioned himself firmly in front of Tommy, his teeth bared in a warning. Sarah's voice rang out, filled with authority and fear. "Get away from my son!" She rushed forward, but before she could reach them, the stranger lunged, his hand reaching for the gate's latch. In an instant, Buddy sprang into action. With a speed and strength that belied his calm nature, he lunged forward, barking ferociously. The man stumbled back, his face twisted in fear as Buddy's powerful bark echoed through the air. He scrambled away, cursing under his breath, and disappeared down the street. Sarah pulled Tommy into her arms, her heart pounding as she looked down at Buddy, who was now calmly standing by her side, his protective gaze still fixed in the direction the stranger had fled. She knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she stroked his head. "Thank you, Buddy," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Tommy clung to his mother, his face pressed against her shoulder. "Buddy saved me, Mom," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and gratitude. "He protected me." From that day on, there was no more talk of sending Buddy away or of questioning his loyalty. The neighbors who had once voiced concerns about the pit bull's presence now regarded him with respect. They had witnessed his true nature, his willingness to stand guard over the boy he loved. Buddy was no longer just a stray dog. He was Tommy's guardian, a silent protector who had proven his loyalty when it mattered most. Sarah and Mark no longer doubted their decision. Buddy had earned his place in their family, not only as a pet, but as a hero. And though the townspeople continued to watch with cautious eyes, they too began to accept Buddy, understanding that appearances could be deceiving, and that loyalty sometimes came from the most unexpected sources. After that harrowing night, Buddy's presence became a source of comfort and security for Tommy's family. The pit bull no longer needed to prove his loyalty. He had shown that he was more than just a pet. He was Tommy's protector. Sarah and Mark no longer hesitated to leave Buddy with Tommy in the yard, trusting in the bond that had been forged through both play and peril. They installed a sturdier gate around the yard, a precaution that reassured Sarah, but deep down, she knew Buddy was their real line of defense. Tommy, now with a renewed sense of admiration for Buddy, spent every possible moment by his side. Each day, their games in the yard grew more imaginative, Buddy eagerly participating in Tommy's grand adventures. They were knights defending a castle, explorers discovering lost worlds, and heroes embarking on epic quests. To Tommy, Buddy was more than a dog. He was his brave and steadfast companion, a friend who would never let anything harm him. One afternoon, as they played in the backyard, Sarah noticed a change in Buddy's behavior. The usually playful dog seemed more alert. His ears perked up, his eyes focused on something beyond the fence. He stayed close to Tommy, never letting him stray too far. Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she remembered the incident with the stranger, wondering if Buddy sensed something she couldn't see. She couldn't shake the feeling that Buddy was on high alert, as if aware of a lingering threat. Curious and a bit worried, Sarah decided to do some research on Buddy's breed. She wanted to understand more about Pitbulls, to better grasp the instincts that drove him. She spent hours reading, learning about their history as guardians and protectors, their loyalty to their families, and the unfortunate misconceptions that often surrounded them. What she discovered only strengthened her trust in Buddy. He was doing exactly what Pitbulls were known for, being a loyal, protective companion. A few days later, as Sarah was coming home from errands, she saw a familiar figure lurking near the edge of her property. Her heart dropped when she realized it was the same man who had tried to approach Tommy weeks before. He was leaning against a tree, his gaze fixed on their yard, a sly smirk crossing his face when he noticed her. Sarah's blood ran cold. She hurried inside, locking the door behind her, and went straight to Mark. "We need to be careful," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He's back. That man. He was watching the yard again." Mark's face hardened. "I'll call the police. He can't keep harassing us like this." But by the time the police arrived, the man had vanished, leaving only a chilling reminder that he wasn't gone for good. Sarah and Mark tightened their security measures, keeping a close eye on Tommy whenever he was outside. But they knew they couldn't watch over him every second. Their only solace was Buddy, whose vigilant presence had become a vital part of their lives. Buddy, sensing the unease in his family, remained closer to Tommy than ever. He rarely left his side, his watchful eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The bond between them deepened, each day reinforcing the loyalty that had saved Tommy once before. Buddy seemed to sense that Tommy was not just his friend but his responsibility, a duty he took seriously. It was as if he understood that protecting Tommy was his purpose, his role in this new family that had taken him in. One evening, while playing in the yard, Tommy noticed Buddy's focus shift toward the edge of the fence. He followed Buddy's gaze and saw something glinting in the bushes. His curiosity piqued, Tommy moved closer, but Buddy immediately stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Tommy tried to sidestep, but Buddy gently nudged him back, his eyes filled with a silent warning. Tommy paused, recognizing the seriousness in Buddy's stance. "Okay, Buddy," Tommy whispered, patting the dog's head. "I'll listen to you." Inside the house, Sarah watched the interaction from the window, her heart swelling with pride. She saw the way Buddy had shielded Tommy, refusing to let him approach the bushes. It was as though Buddy understood that something dangerous might be lurking, something he didn't want his young friend to encounter. Sarah realized that Buddy's instincts were sharper than she had ever imagined, his protective nature an unspoken promise that he would never let harm come to Tommy. Later that night, Sarah and Mark discussed Buddy's behavior. "He's more than just a pet," Sarah said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "He's like a guardian for Tommy. It's as if he knows things we can't see." Mark nodded. "I think we need to start trusting Buddy's instincts. He's proven himself time and again. If he senses something is wrong, we need to take it seriously." In the days that followed, they kept a close eye on the property, watching for any signs of the mysterious stranger. Buddy continued his vigilant watch, his demeanor calm but alert. Every now and then he would stop, ears pricked, eyes fixed on a point beyond the fence. Sarah noticed that whenever Buddy acted this way, Tommy would instinctively stay close to him, trusting Buddy's unspoken cues. One sunny afternoon, Sarah was inside the house, watching Tommy and Buddy play in the yard. She smiled as she saw Tommy laughing, tossing a ball for Buddy to catch. But her smile faded as she noticed a shadow moving along the edge of the fence. Her heart raced when she saw the stranger standing there, his gaze locked on her son. Before she could react, Buddy noticed the man as well. He positioned himself between Tommy and the fence, his body tense, his eyes never leaving the intruder. A low growl escaped Buddy's throat, a warning that was both protective and fierce. Tommy, sensing Buddy's change in demeanor, stepped back, his young face filled with a mix of confusion and fear. The man smirked, taking a step forward as if testing Buddy's resolve. But Buddy didn't budge. His growl grew louder, more menacing, a sound that left no room for doubt about his intentions. The intruder seemed to hesitate, glancing around as if debating whether to challenge the dog. At that moment, Sarah threw open the door, shouting at the top of her lungs, "Get away from my family!" Her voice was filled with a ferocity that surprised even herself. The man glared at her, but Buddy's unwavering stance, coupled with Sarah's shout, seemed to break his resolve. He turned and fled, disappearing into the distance. Sarah rushed to Tommy, pulling him into her arms, her heart pounding as she hugged him tightly. Buddy stood by her side, his protective gaze following the direction the stranger had taken. She looked down at Buddy, tears in her eyes, as she realized how much he had done to keep her family safe. That night, they decided that Buddy would no longer stay outside. He had earned his place inside the house, not only as a pet, but as a beloved family member. Tommy's eyes sparkled with joy as he prepared a cozy spot for Buddy in his room, filling it with blankets and toys. Buddy, finally inside with his family, settled into his new home, content and calm. As the family drifted off to sleep, Buddy lay beside Tommy's bed, his watchful eyes scanning the room, his body relaxed but alert. He was home, and he was exactly where he needed to be, guarding the boy he loved, the family who had given him a second chance. The threat might not have completely disappeared, but with Buddy by their side, they felt safer than ever. After that night, Buddy became more than just a protector. He became a full-fledged member of Tommy's family. No one questioned his place by Tommy's side, and the neighbors who had once looked at him with caution now viewed him with respect and gratitude. The story of Buddy's courage spread through the neighborhood, and people began to understand that he was no ordinary dog. Buddy had earned his place, not just in Tommy's life, but in the hearts of everyone who knew him. Buddy's new role as a house dog brought him even closer to Tommy. He slept beside Tommy's bed each night, his large frame curled protectively at the foot of the bed. Every evening, Tommy would whisper his secrets and dreams to Buddy, who listened quietly, his eyes warm and understanding. It was as if Buddy knew that he was more than just a pet. He was a friend, a confidant, a guardian. The days became brighter for Tommy, who felt safer and happier with Buddy by his side. They shared countless adventures in the backyard, inventing stories where Buddy was the hero, rescuing Tommy from imaginary dragons and villains. Sarah and Mark often watched them from the porch, their hearts swelling with gratitude for the dog who had brought so much joy and security into their lives. One crisp autumn afternoon, Tommy and Buddy were playing in the yard when they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Sarah stepped out onto the porch, her face lit up with surprise as she saw her sister, Emily, walking up the path with her 2 young children. Emily lived in a neighboring town and hadn't yet met Buddy, though she had heard plenty of stories about him from Sarah. As Emily's children, Lily and Ben, spotted Buddy, they squealed with excitement and ran toward him. Buddy, always gentle with children, lowered himself onto the ground, his tail wagging as he allowed them to pet him. Tommy proudly introduced his friend, explaining how Buddy had protected him and earned his place in their home. Emily listened with wide eyes, impressed by Buddy's loyalty and calm demeanor. For the rest of the afternoon, the children played together, with Buddy at the center of their games. He seemed to understand his role, moving gently and patiently as the kids laughed and chased each other around the yard. Sarah watched from the porch, her heart warmed by the sight. She knew that Buddy was more than just a guardian for Tommy. He had become a friend to all of them, a gentle soul who brought peace and joy wherever he went. As evening fell and Emily prepared to leave, her children begged to stay longer, their hands gripping Buddy's fur as if reluctant to let go. Emily smiled, promising them they would visit again soon to see Buddy and Tommy. Watching them say their goodbyes, Sarah realized how much Buddy had become a part of their family's identity, a symbol of resilience and love that transcended any fears they had once held. But even with the newfound peace, the family remained cautious. They hadn't forgotten the threat that had lingered on the edge of their lives. Though the stranger hadn't returned since Buddy's last confrontation with him, Sarah and Mark took extra precautions, keeping a watchful eye whenever Tommy and Buddy played outside. Buddy seemed to sense this responsibility, his instincts sharp as he kept a steady gaze on his surroundings, always ready to protect his family. One night, as Sarah was locking up, she glanced out the window and saw Buddy lying by Tommy's bed, his eyes half closed but his ears alert. A wave of gratitude washed over her, and she knelt beside him, stroking his head gently. "Thank you, Buddy," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "You're our hero. You've kept us safe." Buddy's tail thumped softly against the floor, his eyes meeting hers with a warmth that said everything words could not. He seemed to understand her gratitude, as if he, too, felt a deep connection to this family who had opened their hearts and home to him. As winter approached, the family settled into a comfortable routine. Buddy became a constant presence, his watchful gaze a reassurance on cold, dark nights. The once wary neighbors now greeted Buddy with smiles and waves, their initial fears replaced by admiration. Some even brought treats for him, acknowledging the role he played in keeping the neighborhood safe. One snowy morning, Tommy woke up early, excited to play outside in the freshly fallen snow. He bundled up and ran outside, Buddy trotting beside him, his coat thick and warm against the winter chill. They raced through the snow, Tommy's laughter echoing as Buddy playfully chased him, the two of them leaving a trail of footprints in the untouched snow. As they played, Tommy noticed a familiar figure walking toward them from down the street. It was one of their neighbors, Mr. Jenkins, a retired police officer who had always been friendly to the family. He approached with a smile, watching Buddy and Tommy with a look of admiration. "You've got a good dog there, Tommy," Mr. Jenkins said, patting Buddy's head. "He's a true protector." Tommy beamed, his small chest swelling with pride. "He's the best dog in the world. He saved me and keeps me safe." Mr. Jenkins chuckled, glancing at Sarah, who had stepped outside to join them. "You know, Sarah," he said, "I've seen many dogs in my time, but Buddy's one of a kind. There's something special about him. He's got a heart as big as this town." Sarah nodded, her eyes misty as she looked at Buddy, who was now lying in the snow beside Tommy, his eyes half closed in contentment. She knew that Mr. Jenkins was right. Buddy was more than just a dog. He was a friend, a hero, a member of their family who had chosen to protect them without hesitation. As the seasons changed, Buddy continued to watch over Tommy and the family, his loyalty unwavering. He had found a purpose in his new home, a place where he was loved and trusted. And though the family no longer feared the stranger, they knew that Buddy would always be there, ready to defend them if the need ever arose. Years passed, and Tommy grew older, but his bond with Buddy remained as strong as ever. They were inseparable, their friendship a testament to the power of loyalty and love. Buddy, now a bit grayer around the muzzle, still followed Tommy everywhere, his protective instincts as sharp as they had been on the day they met. One evening, as Tommy sat on the porch with Buddy by his side, he looked out over the yard, remembering all the adventures they had shared. He stroked Buddy's fur, his voice soft as he spoke. "Thank you, Buddy. You've always been there for me." Buddy looked up, his eyes filled with the same gentle warmth that had defined their friendship. His tail wagged slowly, and he pressed his head against Tommy's shoulder, as if to say, "I'll always be here as long as you need me." And in that moment, Tommy understood that Buddy's loyalty went beyond the need to protect. It was a bond that would last a lifetime, a friendship forged in trust and love that would never fade. Years passed, and Buddy's presence remained a steady comfort in Tommy's life. The boy grew from a child into a teenager, with Buddy by his side through every milestone. As Tommy faced the challenges of growing up, Buddy was always there, a source of unwavering support and a reminder of simpler times filled with laughter and adventure. The two shared an unbreakable bond, a friendship that had become legendary in their small town. Buddy's gray muzzle and slower steps marked the passage of time, but his loyalty never wavered. He would still rise each morning to follow Tommy around, though now his pace was gentler, his energy a bit less boundless. Tommy had matured, but his heart still swelled with love and gratitude for the dog who had stood by him through everything. He often reflected on the memories they shared, the games in the backyard, the countless adventures, and the day Buddy had saved him from harm. One spring afternoon, Tommy sat on the porch steps, his hand resting on Buddy's head. The dog leaned into him, his eyes closed as he soaked up the warmth of the sun. Tommy's parents, Sarah and Mark, watched from the doorway, their hearts filled with a mix of pride and bittersweet realization. They knew that Buddy's years were catching up with him, and though they tried not to think about it, the thought of saying goodbye to their loyal friend weighed heavily on them. As the years had gone by, Buddy had become a beloved figure in the community. The neighbors who had once eyed him with caution now spoke of him with admiration. Children from around the neighborhood would visit, bringing treats and petting him, eager to befriend the dog who had once protected Tommy. Buddy's reputation as a gentle protector spread, and his legacy became a cherished part of the town's history. One day, as Tommy prepared to leave for college, he knelt beside Buddy, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he would soon be leaving his best friend behind. "I'll be back to visit you, Buddy," he promised, his voice thick with emotion. "You've been there for me my whole life. I won't forget you, ever." Buddy looked up, his eyes filled with understanding. He leaned his head against Tommy's chest, as if sensing the significance of the moment. For Buddy, Tommy had been his purpose, his reason to stay strong and vigilant. Now, as he gazed into the young man's eyes, Buddy seemed to know that his job was nearly complete. Tommy left for college, and though the house felt emptier without him, Buddy remained close to Sarah and Mark, offering them the same comfort and loyalty he had always provided. His movements were slower now, his steps more deliberate, but his spirit remained as strong as ever. He would lie on the porch, watching over the yard where he had spent so many happy years with Tommy, his eyes filled with memories of the adventures they had shared. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Buddy lay on his favorite spot by the porch. Sarah sat beside him, gently stroking his fur, her heart filled with gratitude for the years he had been a part of their lives. She could feel his breaths growing slower, his body relaxing as he rested his head on her lap. She whispered words of love and thanks, telling him how much he had meant to their family, how he had been more than just a pet. He had been a protector, a friend, a hero. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Buddy's eyes closed one last time, his spirit slipping peacefully into the night. He had lived a life filled with purpose and love, and now, surrounded by those who cherished him, he found his final rest. The family buried Buddy in the backyard, under the tree where he and Tommy had spent so many hours playing. They placed a small stone at the base of the tree, engraved with the words, "Buddy, our loyal guardian and friend." It was a simple tribute, but it carried the weight of all the love and memories they had shared. When Tommy returned home for the holidays and saw the stone, he knelt beside it, tears streaming down his face as he placed a hand on the earth. "Thank you, Buddy," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "You'll always be a part of me." In the years that followed, Buddy's memory remained alive in the hearts of everyone who had known him. Tommy carried the lessons of loyalty and courage that Buddy had taught him, sharing stories of his brave and loving friend with anyone who would listen. Buddy had left an indelible mark on Tommy's heart, shaping him into a kind and resilient person who understood the power of love and loyalty. The tree under which Buddy rested grew tall and strong, its branches providing shade to the yard where children played, where families gathered, and where life continued. It became a symbol of Buddy's spirit, a guardian presence that watched over the family and the home he had loved. Every spring, flowers bloomed around the stone, a reminder of the life he had lived and the legacy he had left behind. As the years went by, Tommy became a father himself, bringing his own children to the house where he had grown up. He would tell them stories about Buddy, the loyal Pitbull who had protected him and taught him about bravery. His children would listen wide-eyed, their imaginations captivated by the tales of the dog who had been more than just a pet. He had been a hero. Tommy's children would play under the shade of Buddy's tree, their laughter echoing through the yard just as his own laughter had all those years ago. The legacy of Buddy's loyalty and love continued, passed down through stories and memories, a testament to the bond that had shaped Tommy's life. In time, Buddy became more than just a memory. He became a part of the family's story, a legend that spanned generations. His spirit lived on in the laughter of children, in the shade of the tree, and in the hearts of those who understood that true loyalty and love never fade. And on quiet nights, when the stars shone bright, Tommy would look up at the sky and feel Buddy's presence, a gentle reminder of the friend who had given him so much. He would smile, knowing that Buddy was still watching over him, just as he always had, his spirit forever woven into the fabric of their lives. Buddy's legacy was one of love, bravery, and unwavering loyalty, a story that would be told for generations, a reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who walk on four legs, offering their love and protection without asking for anything in return. And as long as there were those who remembered, Buddy's spirit would live on, a beacon of loyalty and love that could never be forgotten.